Okay, we're looking today at White Ethiopians. Yep, there's an actual term for that, and it was written a lot in ancient Greek and Roman scholars, made definite alludements to it. Leucoaethiops, and leuke actually is meant to being fair, quite often associated with red and blonde hair and people being quite pale, so on. It's a term found in ancient Roman literature, which may have referred to various non-Negro and light complexioned populations inhabiting Ethiopia region of antiquity. And of course, the Ethiopia regions of antiquity weren't a lot of different areas here. If we'll look, there's everywhere that's brown here is considered to have been Ethiopia when visited by these people and stuff, and quite often you can tell they were just visiting and finding farmers and people that had worked a lot, and quite tan people, mainly around in the Mediterranean and so on, but you can see even up here up above the Scythians where they actually had some, and bleeding all the way out into Asia and up above India, and conspicuously they do not refer to the southern Indians as being that. But so yeah, the exonym that we're talking about there is used by Pliny the Elder. It's also mentioned by Pomponius Mela, Ptolemy, and Orosius. These authorities, though, do not, however, agree on the exact geographical locations of the White Ethiopians in all cases. Medieval geographers, including Ibn Hawqat and Leo Africanus, similarly noted the existence of various white and olive-skinned groups and individuals in territories and kingdoms south of the Sahara. However, the fate of these inhabitants in time has become quite uncertain. And this Ibn Hawqat guy here that we're looking at, that's our Hadqual, he was born in Nisibis, which is Upper Mesopotamia. He's around a 10th century Arab Muslim writer and geographer, chronicler, and from in the 940s and the 960s AD. And he had a famous work, but in that work there he shows you all these different people and things that are about them. He makes a nomenclature. This right here is the Mediterranean, right? You can see that, and he's showing you here, you know, the way that it all goes. Strangely, though, there's this, the Tigris Euphrates is listed as one, and it runs all the way up. He's got some nomenclatures on that, but as far as North and Northeastern Africa and how it's broken down into who people and what's what at the time. So, Pliny the Elder wrote in section 5.8 of his Natural Histories that if we pass through the interior of Africa in a southerly direction beyond the Gaetuli, after having traversed the intervening deserts, we shall find first of all that the Libyan Egyptians, and then the country where the Leucoaethiopians are. So these white Ethiopians are on past that. Now Libya is what the ancient name was for Africa until they named it after this, a Greek general and stuff, and then Libya was just a portion of it, and then they talked about Libya Egyptians being up deep in from Libya or out west from Egypt itself, and where these people would have been, kind of even above Sudan and past and southern of that point. Now, Oric Bates notes that Ptolemy wrote of the White Ethiopians and Melanogaetulians and compares this with the mention of Orosius of the Leucoaethiopians. Try saying that 10 times fast. Bates places the White Ethiopians in Morocco and the Melanogaetulians just east of them, claiming Ptolemy's authority for this and arguing that these descriptives are good evidence of the ancient oppositions of whites and blacks that were in the Sahara and their fusions. Now, Bates further compares these claims with what he argues is the marked xanthrocoid element of foreign Nordic origin in Morocco, i.e. a mixing of light-skinned people from northern Europe. And I think I'll end with some people of the Moroccans and the Amazigh, and I'll show you a vid at the end of this of one that's been compiled. It'll show you some of these people. And by the way, this xanthrocoid is a term that's referred to in a lot of the old Greek literature too, and it is meant to have been a fairer person, but also skin and hair, quite often a red or blonde, probably mainly, and pale skin. And it talks about Achilles and all these other guys that were actually Xanthropoids. So, but he's showing you here that there seems to be these Nordic-looking people all over North Africa and stuff, and they're endemic from there. We'll get to there, though, in a moment. Pomponius Mela wrote in Frankie Romer's translation that on these shores washed by the Libyan Sea, however, are found the Libyan Egyptians, the White Ethiopians, and a populous and numerous nation, the Gaetuli. Then a region uninhabitable by its entire length covers a broad and vacant expanse. And this is up over in the area where we look at of Carthage and things like that. We'll look at this top map here real quick. And I hope this all comes in pretty well on this. And about as good as it can. So you can see across here where he shows you the Gaetuli that are living there. And these Leucoaethiops are here all the way down into the West African area, all the way up to here. So this is your Mauritanian, your Moors type people and stuff. The Garamantes are in here. They're a lighter people and so on. And then there's some darker skinned people in this area, strangely. So it's the way they've kind of compiled it somewhat, but let's continue. Both Herodotus and Strabo speak of two Ethiopias, one eastern and the other western. Strabo also said that the ancient Greeks designated as Ethiopia the whole of the southern countries towards the oceans, not just a region near Egypt. So in other words, everybody was down near the border that had more tan. They were basically called tan people. It's basically just a blanket of that type situation. Ephorus asserted that the White Ethiopians came from far east. Philostratus claimed that the Indians were the wisest of mankind and the Ethiopians are a colony of them. So that has been taken out of misconjecture, and people have turned around and said, oh, the Ethiopians, and they were this and they were that, and it must be the little country uniquely Ethiopia that people are talking about now that's been named that, and it definitely wasn't in elder times in any way, shape, or form. According to Richard Smith, Ibn Hakwal, the 10th century traveler from Baghdad, divides the Berber clans into the pure Sahanhaja and the Banu Tenamak, the later being originally Sudan, i.e. black, whose skin and complexion became white because they lived close to the north. So just believing that, strange conjectures they believe, because they're saying, oh, well, they're just kind of olive skinned, so this, so that, but we know that an albino Negro does not look like a Caucasian, right? And that black people have been up north, in fact, on the north side of the Mediterranean now for quite a few generations, and nobody's, short of, breeding into a mulatto situation, they're not really getting lighter. Now, they don't get as dark quite during the summer, just like what would naturally happen with tanning, because they do have some of that effect, but that's not going on. It's really not in effect. But yeah, they're gonna say something like that. Smith reports Ibn Hakwal is listing 22 names of Banu Tenamak, but without saying whether they were politically, cultural, or geographically cultural or linguistic in nature. Now, Smith suggests that most likely scenario is that these ancient Ethiopian tribes, as represented today by the Haritan, were absorbed into the Berber communities. And that's a different look too. The Haritan are actually considered to be the lower class of the people that are there, and if you look, that's actually the black people that are there. It goes all the way back to the Ibid and the slave trade and so on, and when they had come into this point, and they're still there. So nothing's really changed past that point, and it had already started to come into effect during some of the last of these people here, and so they seem to be a little confused. But then also they make some odd conjections. Black people must have turned white. So you can see this idea that is not valid genetically or anything, even trying to be spread back then as a concept of maybe what happened. Thus he points that Ibn Hakwal's strange report of the Banu Tenamak, who changed from black to white, may be echoed a real event, the absorption of tribes, Robert Brown likewise argues that the white Berbers referred to may be only survivals of the original stock, now reduced to duskiness by the infusion of Arab and Sudanic blood. And that's more of a correct thing, as we find by even linguistics, but genetics and so on today. And there are quite a few sections of tribes and areas and people that are separated somewhat that still have a very light skin and blonde hair, blue eyes, and so on, of the Amazigh. And so let's look here at the Abyssinian king back in the days. Now the Abyssin, or the Abyss, was where the top of the Nile was and up towards the Horn, and you can see back there whenever they were putting this medieval painting in, and there's nobody that's black in this painting at all whatsoever. And this is actually the Sultan of Adal and his forces fighting the Abyssinian king and his men right here. Now Leo Africanus wrote that the olive-skinned complexion were among the natives of these people. And you're like, well, where are they? Oh, well, there's one. Well, that's not a Negro. That's just... okay. It just looks a little more Arabic, doesn't it? How about the dead one here on the ground with the blonde hair on upside down? Right. So it's strange, but then they're tanner than Greeks, aren't they? So according to Richard Smith, 16th century explorer Leo Africanus described the existence of various white or olive-skinned groups and individuals inhabiting territories and kingdoms south of the Sahara, besides the white tawny Moors. Besides the white tawny Moors. So people try to say Moors were black too, and it's like, no, that's not either. Let's just get a picture of Moors here. I don't know if you can see that right there in a little picture here, but these are the Moors. They're coming here and talking to each other. These are some of their pictures. There's thousands of these. And it's a red-headed guy, and a blonde-haired guy, and a black-haired guy, and a blondish red-haired guy. Yeah, that's not real evident even in the people from where that is anyhow now. But so he tells you that these white tawny Moors of the former African proconsular. And so all of North Africa was always Caucasians, and what they mistake saying tan people, and then people have turned it around nowadays and tried to say that something different, but it's definitely never was that way in elder times, and we're not going to start living off of lies. He indicates that such light complexioned people were concentrated in the Horn of Africa, comprising much of the Adal Sudanate's native populace and a significant portion of the denizens of Mogadishu Sultanate. Outside of these areas, Leo Africanus writes that most of the inhabitants were Caffre, or pagan Negroes. Let's see if we get a picture of Caffre here. No, it's a racist slur, though, used to refer to a black person over in there, and they call them Zanj also. So he refers and asserts that the pockets of other white and olive-skinned residents could nonetheless be found on two small islands of Skatroa, the Two Sisters. And so where is that? They're guard a full channel in the Arabian Sea, that there were lighter-skinned people living in that even. And in parts of the Zanzibar coast, the kingdom of Malinde in the island of Quiola, and among descendants of the Chinese settlers on the island of St. Lawrence in Madagascar. So they're not talking about this one people that are up there, by the way, that are kind of Caucasian admixed. The current Bantu expantoid people that we see in the northern, or really the southern Nile area, but the tip or upper Nile are about 40% Caucasian on average, and there are some areas there that show as high as 50% in an admixture. So, speaking of the difference between modern thought and ancient times, Richard Smith warns that even apparently well-defined categories like race can be confusing. According to him, Ptolemy placed two peoples, the Leucoaethiops and Melanogatylians, or what black Gatylians or tan Gatylians, in the far west of North Africa, namely in southern Morocco. Smith suggests that the Leucoaethiops, literally white Ethiopians, also could be described as white black men. Since in ancient times the term Ethiopian referred to skin color, he further asserts that Pliny the Elder places the Leucoaethiops south of the Sahara Desert, south of the Sahara, sub-Saharan, between the White Ethiopians and the Black Negroids. The closest neighbors would then have been the Libya Egyptians, literally the Egyptian Libyans. Another oxymoron there, but however, Smith indicates that Pliny does not mention any black Gaetulians whatsoever, and so somehow that got taken out of context, didn't it? Louis Vivian de Saint Martin posits that the Leucoaethiops were early Berbers who had penetrated southwestern into the desert, and the early Berber people that had come, and you see their symbol there. Edmund Deal Morel, writing in 1902, confirms that Ptolemy and Pliny speak of Leucoaethiops and believes that Ptolemy placed them in the neighborhood of Gambia, where Pliny places them in a couple degrees farther north than that. Morel then speculates on whose those light complexioned Africans could have been. He believes they could not have been Arabs or Bantus, of course, but argues that the Berbers were well known to Pliny's source people and the Carthaginians. So they would have recognized Berbers if they had met them. Morel concludes that the Leucoaethiops may have been an early Fulani, since the first record on West Africa around 300 AD describes an empire governed by white rulers, which was established by a king whose name contains a full feud affix. According to Morel, this Fulani connection was made in 1799 by Rennell in his travels in the interior of Africa in a notebook on Mungo Park's travels. And you can look up on Rennell, there's a lot of stories on him too and things. Richard Smith, writing in 2003, reports that historians will often assume that both Leucoaethiops and Melanogaetunians were of mixed races, or perhaps some combination of races and culture. On this supposition, he suggests that the Leucoaethiops were whites who lived in an Ethiopian-style culture, where the Ethiopians in question would have been the ancestors of modern Harappan. Smith concludes that the only safe conclusion is that the ethnic map was very complex and thus very confusing, even to Ptolemy. According to Smith, the next assumption is that there was some kind of awful ancient race war in which white tribes, like the Leucoaethiops, expelled or exterminated the black tribes. But he argues that there is no evidence for this, and we find today that there were Caucasians in that land all the way back to like 315,000 BC now. Yep, they found a new thing in Jibel Irhoud, and maybe I'll show you a piece of that in a second. Hagap Jung, writing in 2003 of the attitude of Homer and the ancient Greeks, suggests that the Ethiopians take their place as the other of the ancient Greeks, regardless of their skin color. Remarkably, there are white Ethiopians, not because Ethiopians are black, but because they are the other. They became a matter of discourse, you see. So it's just other white people, and that drew them to a matter of discourse. And quite often, any tan people, a lot of farmers run into them and talk crap about them, and a lot of the stuff they went was hearsay. Nobody even went all the way there, but they went off other people's goings and then misconstruing, and so now today sometimes there's some false thoughts that come out of that, I guess. And so let me show you something here. So here's an article on the oldest Homo sapien bones found, and it shakes the foundation of human histories. And then up there in Morocco, where we're talking about there, 300,000-year-old remains of a Moroccan mine of an early Caucasian, and they're classifying it as Homo sapiens, as modern man. So it goes back that far. You know, it's amazing. Whenever I was a kid, they said it was 4,000 to 6,000 years ago we only became modern then. Then they said, no, everybody goes together, and if everybody's modern now, then we have to go back to like Cro-Magnon and then say, there, that's kind of a blanket. Now that we figure out the technology level of everybody on the planet, to make it even Stevens, we have to go back 315,000 years here. And, well, we didn't have to go back that far. We went back to these people. And then these people go back 315,000 years. Not that they were as advanced to that point at the very first point of it, but, and of course, this is probably not the day after they were created as a species. But yeah, pretty interesting here. You know, cradle of humankind they thought was in East Africa about 200,000 years ago. This shows you a cave at 300K. So, more info into this too here. The fossils, those are at Jibel Irhoud. And here's another article on that, where the fossils in Morocco, Pan-African Homo sapiens here. And it shows you, and they're Caucasoids, and they're 315,000 years, give or take 34,000 years on their dating that they use. Right? Thermoluminescence dating. It's amazing. And we have, there's the Ethiopia we were just looking at. And I guess we could look at the word xanthochroi. Xanthochroi here, or whatever. It's a new Latin form of word. Ancient Greek is xanthos. It means fair, yellow, golden, or blonde. Chros is referring to skin or pale skin. Xanthochroi. Mono. So, I think we'll end this one, guys, with something kind of neat. Let's take a look at some North African endemic Caucasians here that are commonly known as the Amazigh or the Berbers. They don't like the term Berbers much. It kind of refers to them being barbaric, which just really meant non-Greek speakers or people that wouldn't go with the idea. The Roman barbarians. It kind of also implies that they were like barbaric or without a culture, and that's not true when a Amazigh actually means noble people. They're called Misuse in New Media. Endemic North Africans. There's no histories of them coming from Europe or anything, although a lot of people say, well, they appear to be European. They have red head, blue eyes. It's real common, but then again, you know, King David had red hair. I just showed you where a lot of Moors had red hair. That's kind of gone and faded out of a people now. All but remnants left of what used to be there quite strong before in time. They're high RH negative too. Them and the Basque are the two highest. Sure, there's an Arabic cross. Then you see things like this pop up like popcorn. Tifinagh script comes from Phoenician, but they were not allowed to speak it anymore quite recently. Didn't that look like the Lady of Elche? They have people in the Canary Islands and the Guanche. Guanche kind of disappeared after Spanish conquest, though. They grabbed that island. But it shows you they go back at least 12,000 years. And in fact, they go back a lot farther than that. Jibel Irhoud says these endemic people go back 70,000 years. And now we're finding a cave that shows them they're up to 315,000 years. But yeah, so look, there's an Ethiopian right there. Like, share, and subscribe, guys. Enjoy. A lot more coming. Peace.